everybody out there. This is Kyle with TechZulu. We're here live streaming from South by Southwest on day 4. We have survived 3, and we are now on the 4th day of South by. I am joined here with Aaron, the author of Adaptive Web Design. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So, Aaron, Adaptive Web Design, everybody knows web design, web development, big topic. Tell us a little bit about the book that you've put together and how it might be able to help some people out there.
Sure. So adaptive web design is essentially about, it's a philosophical approach to web design. It's about creating a experience that actually grows based on the capabilities of the device, based on screen real estate, all sorts of different things like that. So it's imagine responsive web design, but it sort of goes beyond that to talk actually about the capabilities of the device. So whether JavaScript's available, whether certain APIs are available, and actually ensures that you tailor the experience to be something that's going to be a positive experience for somebody, as opposed to saying, you know, you must be this high to ride in order to actually be able to use this site. Because we don't want to go back to the days where we were saying, you know, you must be using Internet Explorer 4 in order to be able to use this site, although there are still some sites that do that.
I was going to say, actually, you know, do you feel like we are in that state right now? Because there are some companies and some sites out there that will actually force people out of using Internet Explorer, or very rarely Firefox, but mostly Internet Explorer, and instead try to push these other browsers.
I think it's a very real situation, and frankly, I think it's lazy developing. I think it's people who don't feel like they have the time, or don't even want to take the time to figure out how to make something work in another browser. I think they're doing their business a disservice. I think anytime that you're limiting your potential audience, that's a bad business decision, right? Like there's a lot of people using the web, but still, anytime that you're actually alienating somebody, it's not doing good for your brand. It's not, you know, opening up opportunities for you. The example that I use a lot is, let's say you run an investment bank or something like that, right? And so you build an app that allows people to manage all of their investments, but you decide, you know what, I'm not going to bother with BlackBerry 5 because BlackBerry 5 sucks, and you know, I no longer want to support that. Well, you don't know, you know, your statistics, your analytics and stuff like that aren't going to tell you that somebody who has, you know, $20 million to invest through you doesn't love their BlackBerry 5, and that's what they want to use to manage all of their investments. And that's, you know, it's a very short-sighted approach to just say, you know what, fuck them. Like, hey, we're not going to deal with them at all, and it's not a good thing. So, you know, that's kind of the approach that I take is, you know, let's make sure that everybody has the opportunity to actually access the content, to be able to do the key tasks, and to be able to do what it is that they need to do or want to do on the web, and just have different experiences. So somebody over here on, you know, the latest version of Chrome might have a fantastic, like, whiz-bang experience, but somebody over here has a plain vanilla experience that's still a positive one, as opposed to no experience.
So then you are definitely in support of kind of cross-browser support, even to previous browsers as well, such as, you know, all the way down to IE7. I know many companies that actually put in practice that we're going to only support, you know, all browsers, but from a certain version and up. So, you know, do you feel the same way, that you should go as far back as you can, or do you think that there's a cutoff point in which people should say, you know, this is no longer supported, or, you know, this is supported?
Well, I think you do need to pay attention to your stats to some degree, especially historical stats. Global stats are less helpful because they don't tell you anything about your product, and if you're launching a new product, you don't really have a good sense of what your traffic's going to look like. But you also have to keep in mind with statistics that it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like people who say, oh, we don't have a lot of Android traffic, so we're not going to worry about Android. Well, somebody may have come, or people may come on an Android device and have such a bad experience that they never come back, and so that's why you have predominantly iPhone, you know, customers or something like that. So it is kind of a balancing act, and you need to temper it with, you know, some actual knowledge of the sorts of people that are using your service. You know, everybody complains about IE6 or IE7 and what have you, but honestly, they're such, you know, I don't know, they're so easy to take care of at this point that it's not really a big deal to be able to support them to some degree. Right. And using a mobile-first approach to web design, when you're actually building for kind of the lowest common denominator first, following the progressive enhancement philosophy, having IE6 be able to have a good baseline experience is inconsequential. It's very, very easy. And, you know, yeah, there might be a few small CSS tweaks you have to do in order to get it to look relatively good, but, you know, it's really not that big of a deal. And then, you know, you only start worrying about having a more advanced experience, let's say with media queries and stuff like that in IE9 and above. You don't even worry about that in IE8 because IE8 doesn't support media queries, and honestly the JavaScript stuff to make it work, it has some issues of its own. So, better to not be throwing tons and tons of code on trying to get IE8 to behave as though it's Chrome 25 and just let IE8 be IE8, let IE6 be IE6, give it a good experience and just move on.
And really just focus on the best experience you can give, because everything has its limitations, but I mean, people are still using multiple browsers. I mean, people still use IE 5.5, which, God bless them, but I mean, it's their browser of choice. I mean, as designers and developers, we do have an audience. Even as a product or as a company, you do have to support it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in some cases it's a choice. In some cases, people have no choice. Maybe they can't afford to upgrade their computer. Maybe there's some other reason that they can't upgrade. Maybe they're at a company that, is still rocking Windows 95. I don't know. Whatever it is. But there are certain things that we can control everything up until a point, but there's a certain point where we have to be able to let go. And to understand that and to be able to just kind of roll with that and let your site roll with that is, I think, a good position to be in. Now, I will say, let's say you're creating a Basecamp or some sort of application where it's a little bit more involved, and it's actually something that people are signing up for and stuff like that. It's not just like a public website. I think you have a little bit more at stake there that you could say, we're not gonna support everything in IE6, or we're not gonna support everything in IE7. I think if you're just building a website to put out there, or a free service or something like that, I think that's the area where you really do need to have the largest amount of support. I do still think in the situations where you are building an app, having support for more browsers is going to open up more opportunities for you to reach people where they are. But I also understand from a business perspective, you may not be able to afford to support all of those devices when you're dealing with customer service on an app and all that other sort of stuff. But if you're just building a website, it's a website, it's content. It's not rocket science.
Well, for any of those who are still on Windows 95, I hope you're able to upgrade. Well, one thing that you did mention, and really I think this is a great tip, a great bit of knowledge for anyone that deals with development out there, and then any web developers out there who might not know. I mean, can you go a little bit more in detail about what media queries are? It's kind of something new. I mean, especially with responsive design. Let's give the designers and everybody and developers a little bit of insights into that.
Sure. So media queries really started being something we could actually use around about 2010. And it's basically a way of saying kind of like traditional media assignment for CSS. You could say, this is my print style sheet, this is my screen style sheet, this is my projection style sheet. But now you can take it a little bit further and say, this is my style sheet that I want to assign for only screen browsers, and I want to do it for any browsers that have a screen resolution of a certain width and larger, or a certain width and smaller, or that are in orientation landscape or orientation portrait, or maybe that have a certain color depth, or that are in grayscale, those sorts of things, and being able to actually be a little bit more programmatic in terms of how you're assigning your style sheets. So rather than having the user choose different style sheets, you could actually apply styles that are more appropriate to the situation that they're in.
So it's very similar to what we've done for a very long time, going back to Internet Explorer and some of the browsers. I mean, before we used to have to do specific hacks. There were little tricks and little things you could do in a general CSS file, or you could create an IE file that would include those. And so media queries is kind of that next step to really help you have that responsiveness that other times would just be much too difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more control from a design perspective. Another one that's really helpful is being able to tell whether a device is Retina enabled or something like that. So you could insert higher res images. Of course, with that, my main thing is just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. I may be on my phone and capable of displaying a Retina image, but at the same time, I might be on the edge network, or I might be traveling abroad and paying by the bit, and I don't want to download your 3.2 meg image to my phone just because I can. Right. It's not that sort of thing, and unfortunately we don't we don't have the APIs yet to know whether somebody is on a metered connection versus a Wi-Fi connection. We're trying to get there. The W3C is working on APIs that will tell us that information, but we don't reliably know that. So at this point, I'm actually advocating that people have some means of giving the low bandwidth images first, and then saying, hey, maybe we have a Retina version of this. If you'd like to download that, it will take longer to download. It'll eat up your bandwidth, what have you. But then the user's in control of deciding whether they want that. Ideally, that sort of control will be built into browsers in the future. But for right now, putting that sort of control in the website makes a lot of sense if you do want to do big hero shot Retina images and stuff like that.
So let's circle back to the book, because you and I just had a nerd out moment and just kind of went deep into development. So let's circle back to the book. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, I've taken a look at it. It's an absolutely gorgeous book again. And so tell us a little bit more about what else we can expect to have in there.
How so?
So what we have APIs. We talk about responsive design. I mean, what else is included in there? In here. Yeah. Not about media. We've had our nerd out moment. So
I mean, the book itself, I wrote to be basically a philosophy book, but punctuated with code that basically demonstrates the philosophy at work. Because my feeling is that techniques change, technologies change. As we learn more and more about this medium that we've been working in, we come up with better ways to do things. So I didn't want to write a technique book, because technique books get out of date very quickly. So what I wanted to do is do a clear and concise description of what progressive enhancement is, and actually make it at least able to be introduced to people at kind of a high level. You could give the first chapter to your boss and say, hey, read this, and it'd be something that would be able to resonate with them. And then the subsequent chapters dive into progressive enhancement at the HTML level, progressive enhancement at the CSS level, progressive enhancement in JavaScript, and then how do we go about using ARIA to enhance websites, again, using that same progressive enhancement philosophy. So it kind of takes you on a story, building up that experience layer by layer to create a rich experience for users.
So is the book available now, and where can people pick it up? Can they pick it up here at South by, or can they get it online only?
We actually published it ourselves. We started a publishing company called Easy Readers. So you can get it at easy-readers.net, or if you go to adaptivewebdesign.info, that'll also take you to the book site. It's $22 for the paperback, $11 for EPUB, MOBI, and PDF. And it's also available in the Kindle store. And we do sell through Amazon as well, but that's the only other retailer that we sell through.
Great. So what, we are on day 4 of South by Southwest, but what else do you have on schedule? Are you going to be anywhere? Can people come out to see you? Can they talk to you about the book?
Well, my panel was yesterday, so that was kind of my big out day. I'm only around until late this afternoon, so I'll be around. But I'm happy to talk to people if they catch me. A few people have been grabbing me in the halls, asking me questions about various things, whether it's about the book or about how they can start writing and that sort of stuff. So I'm happy to help out wherever I can. But yeah, just kind of keeping it low key, and I'll probably be wandering around the convention center for a while today.
Great. Well, Aaron, thank you very much again for joining us. Everybody out there, please definitely check out Adaptive Web Design. Grab a copy. It's definitely worthwhile, whether you're a developer, designer, business, marketer, anything. Definitely pick it up, give it a read. And again, Aaron, thank you very much.